So hey guys, I'm Varish and welcome to Chemistry Day 3. In our Day 1 video, we have discussed about what are atoms, what are molecules, what are elements and what are compounds. And in our Chemistry Day 2, we discussed about the structure of an atom. Now I hope you remember the structure of an atom. Now in today's video, we are going to talk about elements and ions. So let's begin. Now we know that elements are those substances which are really pure, which are made up of physical and chemical properties, like how they reflect light, how they react with other substances, and what are their changes. Those are the different properties, and then they are made up of atoms. So if these three conditions are satisfied, then it is called an element. The pure condition is that when you break down an element, you get the particles of that element but not others. So these are the three conditions, and till now, following these conditions, we have discussed 118 elements. So we have discussed about 118 elements, and all these elements are listed in the periodic table of elements. Now, in this 118 elements, 92 elements are natural and the rest are synthetic. So even humans have synthesized such elements which follow all the conditions to be an element. Now they have different properties, and then they have different reactions and all that. Now let me tell you a fact, and then you can research on it. That's your task for today. So you can research about the elements, the more synthetic elements, and there are 118 elements. The elements can extend till 130. So scientists are trying to extend the elements till 130, and they all start with U. So here's the hint: they all start with U. You can go and make a research on the rest 12 synthetic elements which scientists are trying to create. Now let's discuss about this periodic table of elements. It's a weird table, right? It's not in a perfect shape. It's not a rectangle, or not. It's not a square. It's a weird shape, and it has many meanings. So first of all, it gives us all the elements which are present in the world. So it shows all the elements which are present in the world. Next, it shows us the atomic number. Now what is atomic number? We have discussed in our Chemistry Day 2. If you didn't watch the video, please visit our website and watch, or even the YouTube channel. So what is this atomic number? Is that it defines the number of protons in an atom of that element. Now what I mean to say is that, take for example hydrogen, or maybe you can take potassium. Now potassium, K, is an element, and then it has many atoms inside it, and here we can make sure that the one atom of potassium contains 19 protons in its nucleus. So to understand what are protons, you need to understand the structure of an atom in Chemistry Day 2. So potassium, or K, has 19 protons in one atom. So the number above that element shows the number of protons, and as I told you, if at least one proton increases or decreases, the complete element would change. Though the neutrons and electrons might be the same, if one proton decreases or increases, the whole element would change. So the number above that element is the atomic number, which gives us the number of protons in one atom of that element. So they are even arranged like that, and on the basis of that, hydrogen comes first, then helium, then lithium, then beryllium, then boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminium, silicon, and it goes more and more. So this is the periodic table of elements, and it shows the atomic mass to now. Here below this element, they have written the full form of that element, but when you see a real periodic table, you would find some decimal numbers below this one, and it is called the atomic mass. Now it is a very interesting topic. It's all based on calculations, and it tells us the average weight of an atom of that element. Now it's crazy, right? And the weight of that element, and if you want, you can go and have a research on it, but I'd surely make a video on this atomic mass. And let me give you a hint. This mass is so less, so it is measured in AMU, or sometimes even U. So you can go and have a research on it, or else I'll explain you guys. So this decimal number, it also shows the average atomic mass. And then you ask me why this weird shape, then it shows the properties. Now all the elements are different, but some elements might have some similarities between them, and according to these similarities the periodic table is designed. So for example, take the first column with hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium and francium. Now you take all these elements and you see that they are called alkali metals. And now why are they called alkali metals? Because there is something common in them. You know what they do is they have an electron in their outer shell and they try to donate that electron, and there are something like halogens like chlorine which try to take that electron, and then they form a compound which we will discuss later. So according to these properties too, the periodic table is designed. So this is about the periodic table. Now let's go and discuss about what are ions. Now ions are special names for atoms. Now atoms are only called ions when they are charged particles. Now you need to understand this, right? So let's take an atom of carbon, basically, with 6. So it has 6 protons, that's for sure. So an atom of carbon has 6 protons for sure. Now the number of neutrons and electrons vary in that atom. So if there are more electrons than the protons, then it would be the electrons would dominate the protons, and then it would be a negative charge. Or if they are lesser than the protons would dominate the electrons, and then it would be a positive charge. And then if they are equal, it is not called an ion. So you need to remember that. In our next video, Chemistry Day 4, we will talk about calculating the ionic charge of an atom. So for that you need to get an idea of what are ions. So ions are basically atoms which have a positive charge in them or which have a negative charge in them. So some ions may have a positive charge flowing through them. You know, atoms have both positive charges and negative charges, but what type of charge is more is what defines the ions. So basically ions are the atoms which have a charge, and charge means a positive charge or a negative charge. So there should be a more number of protons or neutrons. They should never be equal. If they are equal, then it's completely neutral, and such type of atom won't be called an ion. So atoms are called ions when they have a specific charge, and that charge can be a positive charge and a negative charge. And based on these two things, ions are of two types: cations and anions. So let me just write it over here. Cations, which are for positive charge. So if an atom has more number of protons than the electrons, so the protons dominate the electrons, making that atom a cation. Now anions are the negative charges. So here we can see that if there are more electrons than the protons, the electrons would dominate the protons, and then that would be a negative charge particle. So it would be an anion. So for example, carbon with 6 protons and 7 neutrons would make C-1. How we would calculate this, we would discuss in the next video. So because electrons are dominating the protons, it would be an anion. So like that. So these are ions. So this brings us to the end of our day 3. In our day 3, we learned about what are elements and how the periodic table is basically listed on its atomic mass, on its atomic number, on its properties, etc. And what are ions. So you need to remember ions. You need to have a grip of ions in your hand, so that we can go ahead and solve what is the ionic charge of an atom. So in our next day, we would see how to find the ionic charge of an atom. Now, what is that ionic charge? We will check if that particular atom is gonna be a cation with a positive charge or an anion with a negative charge. So remember, cations are ions or atoms with positive charge flowing through them, so protons dominate the electrons, and anions are negative charges with electrons dominating the protons. So this brings us to the end of our video, and as I said, in the next video, Chemistry Day 4, we would be dealing with complete maths and talking about how we can find the ionic charge of an atom. So until then,